Hello there, everybody. I'm WaitWhat, and I bring you more Satazius, which means another rant, though. This is just going to continue off of the last one, so I'm going to call it Rant 1.5. Yeah. Last time I talked about JRPGs and Final Fantasy, and I'm going to continue doing that because that's what I'm good at. But this time I'm going to go into more detail from what I did before. So this one's specifically Final Fantasy related. I need to remember the controls, because I don't remember the controls. Where are the controls? Like, I don't remember exactly what I... That's not what I wanted to do. Spacebar? Z? Ew. Easy! Yeah. I don't remember exactly what I talked about before, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned 7, 9, and 10. Final Fantasy 7, 9, and 10 were my favorite three, which... Yeah, that might not have been the impression a lot of people got based on how I was talking about 7 last time, but yes, it's one of my favorites. Deal with it. That's how life works. It's my third favorite. And I always... what shoots? What shoots? I don't know what shoots. Oh, wow. I found out how to switch weapons on the fly. But, anyway. Yeah, I talked about that, and I mentioned the whole first game syndrome thing, that your first Final Fantasy game always seems to be the favorite, which I still kind of fall into, since 10 was my favorite, and lo and behold, it's pretty much tied with 9 for my favorite. But anyway, so there's that. Anyway, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what I think about these 3 games in particular, while probably dying a whole crap ton like I always seem to do. Like that. And anyway, so I'm just going to kind of compare these 3 games, and good and bad about both of them. I don't claim to be an expert reviewer, so don't expect anything amazing. I'm off to a great start. Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, so first thing I'll mention, I suppose... Oh, crap. I hate you guys! First thing I'll mention is the world. Okay. One reason why Final Fantasy 7 is not my favorite is the world just isn't as awesome as some of the other ones. Which, I know that's kind of personal opinion, I guess, but... Okay, it's like... I don't know. I just don't feel a real big connection to the world of Final Fantasy 7. Whereas, like... Okay, I'll get to this game in a little bit. But, like... I can almost say the same about Final Fantasy X. Like, the worlds are okay, but there's nothing to really make me feel like, wow, I really like this world. Or, like, make me really feel a connection to it. Even though, like I said, I love 7 and 10. Now I'm gonna make this quick. Final Fantasy 9, however... Why did I... That game, for me, is just something special in terms of world. I think part of it is, it depends on, like, what mini games are in the... make you, like, play around in the world. Because Final Fantasy 9 didn't have a... or Final Fantasy 7 didn't have a whole lot. I mean, it had a little bit with, like, the submarine exploration and that kind of stuff, but it didn't have a ton of stuff. So I didn't get, like, feel like a real connection to the world. Final Fantasy X, it had the monster collection. Yeah. It had the monster, monster collection, but I don't know. That was just kind of exploring places I've already been and not many hidden secret places. And most of the hidden secret places that were in Final Fantasy X weren't that big. Except for like Omega Ruins, which is the bonus dungeon, which is just pretty much there to be difficult. Whoa, that was close. But then there's Final Fantasy IX. And I can honestly say that I really like the world of Final Fantasy IX. Not only just because of the stuff we do in the main game, but I also really love, somehow, it's kind of surprising when you really get down to it, but I really love the mini game. The little mini game that you do. The mini game that you do that makes you, that one. I keep forgetting still. The mini game you do that makes you pretty much explore the world. The chocographs. I have a ton of fun with the chocographs. Which, if you don't know, there's a little mini game. They take place a little bit later in the world. At least I always do it a little bit later in the game, where you can go into these special areas and ride on a chocobo and start treasure hunting. And once you've been doing that for a little while, it starts getting to the point where you might dig up little chocographs, which are like rock slabs with images on them that are basing them on some place in the world. And you go to these various places in the world and find these treasures, and you can start going further and further because, oh my gosh, the more treasure or more chocographs you find, the more your chocobo, will be basically upgraded. You know, the whole green chocobo, the yellow gold chocobo, black chocobo type thing, which means you can like, hey, now you can run over rivers, now you can run over mountains, that kind of thing. And you can explore more and more of the world. And finding all these treasures really makes you explore every little nook and cranny of the world in Final Fantasy IX. Like, normally you wouldn't go explore these random little islands on this side of a continent that you've like pretty much never been on. But with these chocographs, you're exploring every little part of this world, which really gives you an appreciation for the world. You're looking for every little crack in the mountainside, every little bubble, like little bubbles in the ocean, because that's where treasure is. So you really get an appreciation for this world. And the mini game, just fun as hell, because a lot of the items, I suck at this so bad, because a lot of the items you get from doing this mini game are literally the best in the game. Best armor, best weapons for some characters, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely worth it. And I just somehow have a lot of fun with it. Maybe I'm just weird that way, but I love it. And you have to do all this to get to the one super boss in the game, which I can honestly say is not my favorite. He's like freaking giant paintball, which is kind of weird, but I hate this game. Anyway, that's why I love the world in Final Fantasy IX. Fantastic world. Stuff. I'll probably do another talk later on in the future about super bosses and stuff like that, because I'm a big future super boss person. But okay, world. There's that. Final Fantasy IX wins out of all of them. Yeah. Battle system, Final Fantasy 9 and 7 are all like roughly the same, so there's not much different there. Final Fantasy X, however, is one that sometimes gets flack for being a full-on turn-based, doesn't even have the ATB system. Well, Final Fantasy X, I consider my first real JRPG, because, I mean, yeah, I didn't get through that. Oh, like, I can argue, or you can argue whatever, that the Game Boy Pokemon games are JRPGs, which they are, and technically those were my first, but they feel a lot different from normal JRPGs, so I don't really consider them the same as Final Fantasy X, which was my first full-on JRPG. Took me hours and hours and decades and years and sadness and awesome to beat. Whatever. And when you really get down to it, maybe not when you first play the game, but later playthroughs, you learn just how easy the game actually is. Because the battle system and how the characters work, they're all set up that every character is meant to basically deal with a certain type of enemy. Like flying, fast, elemental, that kind of thing. Every character has an enemy they're meant to be beat. And if you take advantage of this and the actual like party rotation, if you examine how, what, when, who goes where, then you realize, that, which it's not all that difficult to figure out. I'm scared. How did that work? Okay. Oh yeah, the laser. Anyway, you learn that stuff. Well, like every character, since they have their moves, you can really take advantage of that, and like pretty much 80% of the battles in the game, you can just completely finish without like any characters taking damage. Because not only do the characters most of the enemies, for some reason, throughout the game are pretty much one-hit kills as long as they're being attacked with the correct character that deals with that. Like Aaron, he deals with armored guys. Titus deals with the quick guys on the ground. Waka deals with the flying guys. Lulu deals with the elemental dudes, and yeah. As long as you do that, then most enemies throughout most of the game are one-hit kills. Just funny. But then, I suck! Then on top of that, you have your abilities that specifically... You suck. Get out of here. You have your abilities that specifically delay enemy attacks, like Waka's Dark Attack, Dark Buster, Sleep Attack, Sleep Buster, Silence Attack, Silence Buster. Those things, which make it so the enemy can't attack. And Kamari's the one that gets kind of gypped in the Sphere Grid range, because he hardly has his own slot. And if you take him down like Waka's route, then you'll have double the attacks that can disable the enemy's attack, which is great. So you can use those attacks to stop the enemy from attacking if you can't kill him in one hit. But also, if those don't work, you have Titus's Delay Attack and Delay Buster. So most enemies in the game can be killed with... Yeah, I recognize this place. Go up here. Yeah, most enemies in the game can be killed with just that. And if you can't kill them, then you can at least disable their attacks, which is entertaining and kind of funny. Anyway, that was too much about battle system. But next, and probably one of the most important things for a Final Fantasy game to be likable in my mind would be, as far as I'm concerned, the characters. And as far as, that's why I'd say some of the more recent Final Fantasy games have not been as good, because the characters are just not as fun, or there's no real development. Like Final Fantasy 12, for example. That game, I don't care what anyone says, it has a great world, and I do like the story in that game. And some of the characters are cool at the start, but that's just it. They're cool at the start, and they never develop into something better. Like, Balthier, Fran, and Bosch are typically the... Oh my gosh, I went right into that. Typically the favorites in that game. Typically, from what I've heard. But they're cool from the start. They don't develop into something cooler. They're just cool from the start, and they pretty much stay cool like that. But there's no real character development. And stuff. Oh, that was close. I've gotten here before. I recognize this. Boss. It has a charge. It had a charge. Like, why couldn't I use my special? It had a flippin' charge. I don't get how it works. Okay, anyway. I don't even remember what I was talking about. And I died again. What was I talking about? I honestly don't remember. Wow. This is what happened in the last playthrough. That guy kept killing me. Die. Characters. Wasn't I? At least I was getting into characters. Don't care. Sure, we'll talk about characters. Oh, let's talk about Final Fantasy 12. Okay, well. Okay, the thing about Final Fantasy 7, now I'm going back to that. Final Fantasy 7 characters really aren't all that... Oh my gosh. Aren't all that... I don't want to say... Oh gosh, I'll say likable. They're not all that likable. And I'm making a difference between likable and cool. Because, oh, they're plenty cool. They're plenty badass. But in terms of actually being likable, characters in Final Fantasy 7 aren't all that likable. Because... Oh my god. Like, Barrett, guy with a gun arm, that's awesome. He's badass. Sid, angry dude who's always cursing, but he's a spaceship pilot and all stuff. He's badass. Cloud, okay, even if he is Zack, who kind of thinks he's... Or Cloud, who thinks he's Zack, he's still technically, as far as we know, Soldier First Class, and that's badass. Most of the characters are badass, and in that way they're cool, but... in terms of actual characters, they're not all that likable that you're gonna be like, oh, these characters are awesome, I really like them. Like, Vincent, he's a freaking vampire dude, that's badass, but in terms of being likable, he's not all that likable. But then there's... And then I'll skip to Final Fantasy X, because it kind of has... I think Final Fantasy X has more likable characters. Titus is far more likable, because as a main character, he's by far the easiest to connect to. Because he's not some crazy... He's not some crazy badass from the start. Which makes him, like I said, a lot easier to... I made it through that! I could have! Why? Oh my god. It's much easier to connect to him than it is more the other badass main characters. Because, like, I don't care what they say in the game. He's a crybaby, blah, 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 blah. I think any of us would react the same way he did if thrown into a new world where we know nothing about how life works. But you got to notice, in like all Final Fantasy games that have a badass main character, at some point through the game they always have some frickin' mental crisis where they're like, oh, but this, and I don't know, just some screw up that, like Cloud, Final Fantasy 7. He has a whole mental thing going on a little bit later where Tifa has to go into his head or whatever it was and save his ass. Like, all badass main characters always have a mental breakdown at some point in the game, then they come back stronger. Where, like, the characters that aren't badass from the start, like Titus, look at that guy. Everyone calls him Crybaby and that kind of stuff, and he's kind of, yeah, he's just that. But he never has this mental breakdown. Whenever any little point where he gets discouraged, he quickly comes back saying, hey, I'm gonna change things. I don't want it this way, so I'm going to change it. And he changes the world because of it. And yeah. what was I saying? Yeah, he changes the world because of his badassery. Which he kind of makes himself. He isn't automatically a badass. He has to become one. And... oh, God. That one. What is that? I don't know. This weapon sucks. Okay, but... yeah, which is why Titus is by far the easiest main character to connect to. Because he's just made to be connected to. And I prefer it that way a lot more than the other ones. I still died. Now, Final Fantasy IX. I've left this one to last because this one has by far my favorite characters. Because in 10, you have the likable characters like Auron. He's a unique one that he's badass, but he's also really likable. Because his backstory is very good and just... plus he's just a plain likable character. Then there's other ones that aren't as likable. Like, for some reason, I've never been able to get into Lulu all that much. Though I can see how she is likable, because you know how Final Fantasy... this is getting crazy. Final Fantasy X has that kind of affection system thing that a few cutscenes change depending on who you're with. Or depending on, like, what you do in battle with these characters. I've always been with Lulu in these cutscenes, so I've gotten to like her a little bit better in that sense. But anyway, as I was saying, Final Fantasy X has some likable characters, some badass characters, and some mixture of both, which is great. Final Fantasy IX, though, the dynamic of the characters in that game is just freaking amazing. How better, like, what's his name? Oh my god, what's his name? Oh my god, this is ridiculous. The Knight! Why did I suddenly forget his name? Oh, that's seriously gonna tick me off. Okay, anyway, that guy, the frickin' Knight, who is all about protecting Dagger and nothing but Dagger, the princess. Princess! That guy. He's like very... him and Zidane do not get along at first. I'll just call him Rusty because that's what Zidane calls him. Because I apparently can't remember his real name for some stupid reason. Screw it. Okay, I'm just going to talk and let the computer play and show us how badass it is as always. Come on, stupid game. Yeah. But, yeah, so... oh my god, what's his name? I hate my life. That guy in Zidane, or he pretty much hates Zidane in the beginning because Zidane's a thief and protect the princess, blah 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 blah. But over the course of the game, their back and forth banter and everything to do to the point where Rusty starts trusting Zidane, and it actually makes sense because everything they've been through, and then all the other characters, frickin' Vivi, who's like one of the best characters in the universe. How you see him develop into this kind of shy, weak-willed character to this strong black mage who was never brought down, and because everybody believed in him. Steiner, that's his name. I kept thinking Cypher, which is Final Fantasy VIII. It's like, no, that's not true, but yeah, Steiner. And yet, Steiner has a big problem with Zidane, yet he loves Vivi to the point where he's like, do sword magic with me, which is awesome. Just all the characters in Final Fantasy IX have a great... they just work so well together. Like, even some of the later characters you get, like, I think some of the weakest characters in the game would be Eiko, the summoner, and potentially Amaranth. Maybe Quina, but even they all have their cutscenes with the characters that give them a dynamic with the characters, which is great. Pretty much every character is likable, and they can be badass. Every character has a good dynamic with everybody else, and they all seem like they belong along in the party. They're this group of people who were forced into this team together, and still they feel like a tight-knit group. They're forced into this team together, and yet they're making the most of their situation, and it works. Whereas in like some of the newer, like Final Fantasy 12 especially, the characters were forced into this group, or 12 and 13, the characters were forced into this group together, and yet, even by the end of the game, they don't feel like a tight-knit group. They still feel like they just want to... Okay, 12 is not as bad as 13, but especially in 13, they just feel like they all want to get the hell away from each other. They have no choice but to be at each other's side because of this mission. And once they're out of there and done with this mission, they're out of there. That's what they feel like, where 9 does not feel like it at all. They grew to like each other. And as far as I'm concerned, like I said, Final Fantasy 9 is important, or characters in Final Fantasy games are an important thing that makes them good or bad. And Final Fantasy 9 has, as far as I'm concerned, some of the best characters in the entire series. The most likable. They all just get together, well, perfectly, and all that. Stupid computer showing off. I don't want to keep talking on much. I mean, there's the other little things that about Bowser that I didn't mention. The whole overdrive limit type thing, which in each game it kind of depends. Like Final Fantasy X probably has the best version because when you get access to it, you don't automatically have to use it right away. You can save it for as long as you want, which is great help for boss fights. In Final Fantasy IX, though, you get the limit, and it's probably more powerful from the start, but it disables your main attack. So you can save it, but you can't just do a basic attack anymore, which is kind of frustrating. And then Final Fantasy IX probably has the most annoying version with its transform, where... Because trance is really good in that you can do multiple attacks with it. It's not just one attack, your special power is over. No, it's full on. You get to use like 3 or 4 turns of attacks worth, typically, with overlimit, which is great. You can do a lot of damage in that amount of time. But it's one of those things that it depends on when you get hit by your opponents, when you get trance. And you're gonna try to save your trance a lot, like, so it doesn't get activated until boss fights. The problem is, it happens so many times where you are just playing the game, trying to get to this boss fight, saving your trance, and you happen to get into a random encounter right before the boss, which happens to hit your character, and you go into trance, and so then you enter the boss fight with an empty gauge. So it sucks so bad, and it happens to everybody. So that's the problem with Final Fantasy IX's trance. See, it's kind of funny that 9 is like my favorite game in the series, even though the trance I have issues with, even though it's awesome. And the final boss is easily the worst final boss in the entire series, as far as I'm concerned. Because it's literally, you beat who you think is the final boss, and then a new guy just randomly shows up. You've never heard of this guy before. You have no idea why he's here, and suddenly, you all need to die, Brad. He's the final boss. Like, what? Who are you, and why are you attacking me? And yeah, I have no idea what's going on. I think I'm done with Satazius now. I have a bunch of these bullet hell games I found out, so I'll go to another one in the future. Maybe. Probably. But I already forgot what I was talking about. I'm bad at this. Like I said, when you only have a basic idea of what you're going to talk about, you don't plan really anything. It's kind of like, what was I saying? These Sims had a lot more swords for this guy than did me. Also killed him a lot quicker than I did, but can you go on the next one? I'm sorry, but can you? No? Alright then. Well, anyway, with what I've mentioned, Final Fantasy X, 9 and 10 are pretty much tied for my favorite game for various reasons. I'll probably go into those reasons more, even more into the future, like super bosses. That'll be another conversation entirely. Final Fantasy 7 is a little bit lacking in some of the other regards, which is why I don't like it as much. Like in characters, I don't care about them as much as 9 and 10. Battle system is all kind of across the board. The world, I don't care about the world as much as 9. Especially 9. 10 as well, I guess. Especially 9. And... No! Okay, I'm done. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed my... I don't know if you can't even really consider this a rant, but it just... whatever. Hope you enjoyed this. I'm WaitWhat, and this was more Satazius, which I still suck at, and I hope you enjoyed it. And my Final Fantasy talk. I'm sorry if you don't like the game or care about the game, and damn it, stop it! Goodbye.